Yep.
Hello, welcome to today's workshop, Rising to the Challenge of Behaviors at Home, at School, and in the Community. If you have questions during today's workshop, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and we hope to have some time to discuss those after our initial presentation. And when we ask questions, you can also share your ideas there as well. Tomorrow afternoon, you will receive a link asking you to complete a survey about the quality of the workshop. Please do take some time to give us your feedback. It really helps us make sure we're providing information that is helpful to you. That email will also include links to related information sheets. And once you complete the survey, you will get a certificate of attendance or a link to the certificate of attendance. My name is Laura Jean. My pronouns are she, her. I am the project coordinator for the Children's Mental Health and Emotional or Behavioral Disorders Project. I've been working here at Pacer Center for 5 years and with children and families for over 20 years. I have a background in child psychology and public affairs. I'm also the parent of 2 girls, 13 and 15, both who have disabilities.
Hi, welcome. I'm Karen Mocha. My pronouns are she, her. I am an advocate here at PACER on the Children's Mental Health and Emotional Behavior Disorders Project. I've been working here at PACER for a little under 2 years. I have a background in education, and I'm also the parent of 2 girls, ages 23 and 21, who both have mental health challenges.
We hope today's workshop will provide you with more information on understanding your child's mental health and behaviors and how we can improve our response to challenging behaviors using positive supports and interventions. According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. They also recognize it is an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and shape the world we live in. That it is crucial to personal, community, and socioeconomic development. And most importantly, that mental health is a basic human right. Let's start by talking about some of our assumptions about behavior. We tell kids all the time to behave or be good. We have a lot of expectations for children when it comes to how they conduct themselves and respond to everything happening around them in their different environments. What do we mean when we talk about behavior? What assumptions do you have about why someone behaves the way they do? What are some assumptions others have shared with you about why a child behaves a certain way? How many of you have been on the receiving end of unsolicited advice or dirty looks when your child has struggled in public? I'm sure every parent here has been in an uncomfortable position of being told or having it implied you are doing it wrong. Oh, did I see that here in the chat? Jamie, just a quick pause. When people respond in that question and answer box,
Mm-hmm.
is that different than I'm seeing like the participant box?
The participants is just who's all on. So
Okay,
no,
so
yeah,
I
yep.
think I have the wrong box there. Just want to make sure we can see what people are responding as we go.
There's no Q. There's nothing in the Q&A right now.
Will it pop up? Because it's not showing me the box. I just like to have I just don't want to lose track of it as we're going.
I
Okay,
think
here.
if
Okay,
you
I have it. Sorry,
okay,
thanks. I just want
yeah,
to make sure as we ask questions if people want to jump in with things.
Yeah, and I can I think from my own personal experience, I'll give a couple examples of assumptions that I've been on the receiving end. Some are, I think we've all felt judged as parents, that our kids aren't disciplined correctly. I think other assumptions are they just want attention, they're spoiled. Trying to think what else. Um, that's what comes to mind right
Yeah,
now.
I think a lot of us have experienced that at one point or another when our child
Yep.
is not handling things well.
Oh, I see there's something here.
Yes, I have been told that my kids' behavior and their mental illness was a result of parenting or even my beliefs, and that you need to be more strict at home. Yeah, definitely. We've definitely experienced those as well. And to me, what I try to remind myself is that just tells me that they don't have that same experience that we do, that they haven't lived with a child who's really struggling with some of those challenges. to really understand that our strictness or how we're parenting isn't necessarily the root of that problem. Yes, a couple more on being strict. So let's stop here and talk about some other assumptions. We assume that everyone is doing the best they can with the tools they have, parents and kids alike. Parenting is hard work. Being a child is hard work. It is a lifelong journey for us and our children. And just when you hit a comfortable stride, your child reaches a new and different stage of development that likely bring new joys and new challenges. Or other changes happen that disrupt their ability to manage how they are responding. If we can shift the way we think about those preconceived or biased ideas about behavior and use a different lens, we can learn more effective strategies and skills that help reduce challenging behaviors while helping our children learn and develop the skills they need to navigate their emotions, manage their behaviors, have a sense of competence and success at home, school, and in their community. First, we need to think of behavior as communication. It has meaning. Like this iceberg, illustrates the behavior is what we see, but most often the behavior is not what is wrong, but it is usually what we respond to and what we focus on. The behavior may be a symptom of an unsolved problem or unmet need. We need to understand the meaning of the behavior in order to respond effectively. Behavior meets a need, and if that need is met by the problem behavior, it is likely to be reinforced and used again. We have all likely reinforced unwanted behaviors in trying to keep the peace and reduce any immediate safety concerns, and that's okay. The first rule to remember is that all rules and expectations need to be flexible and reasonable.
Jamie, someone is saying that they can't hear us.
Yeah, I'm gonna send a message and see if
Okay.
they can.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.
While each difficult situation can feel like we failed our kids in some way, they also provide us the opportunity to assess what happened and why, and if how we reacted further escalated the situation, and what we might want to try differently next time, as well as what worked this time and why, so we can encourage more of that moving forward. Remember when I said this is a journey? Please know that I am on this journey right now, and it's a daily practice, and one that takes time and patience, and that I make mistakes all the time. Just ask my kids. I'd be happy to tell you. Still, like any other skill or muscle, with patience and practice, we get better at it. When we have a child who has big reactions to the things around them, it can be easy to react rather than respond to their behavior. When we do that, though, we focus on the wrong thing. We reinforce the behaviors we are trying to stop, and in doing so, we unintentionally escalate the situation. We don't have time to dig into all of the different mental health diagnoses today that can result in increased behavior challenges in children, but one we will mention is anxiety. Many of the calls we receive at Pacer Center involve a child with anxiety, whether that is their primary disability or whether that's a secondary disability that has developed due to having the challenges they face navigating the world with a disability. Dr. Laura Prager, the director of the Child Psychiatry Emergency Services at Massachusetts General Hospital, explains, anxiety is one of those diagnoses that includes behavior that is a great masquerader. It can look like a lot of things, particularly with kids who may not have words to express their feelings, or because no one is listening to them, they might manifest their anxiety with behavioral dysregulation. On the surface, this may look like a child who is irritable, has trouble sleeping, has somatic complaints, headaches, stomach aches, or becomes physically or verbally aggressive in certain situations. It can really manifest in a wide range of behavioral challenges. When confronted with a challenging behavior, we tend to conclude that the child can't or won't do what they have been asked to do. If we assume won't, the strategy of choice is often to punish or provide a consequence. But when we think can't, we are more likely to support them and develop strategies using skill-building interventions. I can think back to a lot of meltdowns where my child insisted they couldn't do something, where I dug my heels in because I knew they were physically capable of putting on their shoes, picking up their toys, or completing their math homework. This didn't solve the problem, meet the need, or de-escalate my child. Instead, it usually made things worse. I wasn't able to listen. I didn't ask myself, why does my child think they can't do this right now? I didn't help them solve the problem. The lens we are looking through helps us see if the behavior is the problem, or the symptom. We continue to do what works for us, despite the consequences, unless we learn better skills, children and parents alike. To improve our responses to challenging behaviors, let's think about what's happening with the child. There are many parts of the brain involved in different tasks related to behavior. This is not intended to be a substantial lesson in brain development by any means, but this very quick overview helps us understand why our child may struggle and how we can support their positive growth. There is massive growth and development of the brain in the first couple years of life. 90% of brain development is complete by age 5. However, the brain continues to develop well into a person's mid-20s, and it's not until then that the frontal lobe fully develops. The frontal lobe is where higher level cognitive skills, often referred to as executive functioning, occurs. These skills allow you to control and coordinate cognitive abilities and behaviors. The 3 processes of executive functioning are cognitive flexibility, working memory, and inhibitory or impulse control. It's helpful to remember this when we wonder why our children continue to be a bit impulsive and do not always think things through in all of their actions. Their frontal lobes and those abilities are still growing and developing. The 3 executive function skills rely on other skills such as language development, expressive and receptive language skills, including comprehension, understanding what others are saying to us, and being able to access appropriate words and speech sounds to share our thoughts with others. Visual, auditory, and sensory processing, visual, spatial, and motor skills, nonverbal communication, and general processing speed. How quickly can they think about what they're being asked to do? With all of that in mind, it's easy to understand why a child who has a disability in one or more of these areas might struggle with behaviors. Children who struggle with executive function skills are more likely to report disliking school, putting their academic success at risk. This is why focusing on building those executive function skills is so important. At home, these activities might look like playing games, simple games like Simon Says, Red Light, Green Light, or other cooperative games, or activities that require a little planning and multiple steps to complete, following a recipe, meal planning, reading stories, working together to solve a problem, and modeling how to cope with various stressful situations are just a few examples. It's also important to remember that the brain operates on a use it or lose it principle. Only those connections and pathways that are activated frequently are retained. For youth with memory or processing challenges, that might mean more repetition is needed to be able to use that skill reliably and independently. So what is happening with our child when our child is using behaviors to communicate that something in their world is not working for them? What happens when they become stressed or perceive there is a threat? You can see here that the unstressed brain is able to control thoughts, emotions, and actions. But once stressed, the amygdala becomes activated and their attention is diverted and becomes hyper-focused on the stressor. Now I use the word perceive here because the child's perception of what is happening and why may not match what we understand to be a threat. Keeping in mind that children are still learning to distinguish between things that they want and need. So a desired toy or activity and the inability to access that item or continue doing that preferred activity until it has satisfied their need may trigger stress and a fight, flight, or freeze response, and the challenging behaviors that go with that as they try to solve this problem or meet that need. Likewise, when we use the threat of discipline or punishment in a child who is already agitated or stressed as a means to stop the behavior, this can serve as a trigger for a fight, flight, or freeze response, escalating the behaviors and impairing learning. By focusing the attention on misbehavior, we may miss the opportunity to teach skills and can create and reinforce coercive cycles of behavior between us and our child. So why doesn't traditional discipline always work? Verbal reprimands, timeouts, taking away privileges, In school, that might be things like detention, suspensions, exclusions, or expulsions. These types of discipline rely on external controls. And we know from decades of research that punishment as a form of discipline may not have the desired effect of changing a child's behavior. It may in the short term stop the behavior because of the fear of punishment. But these methods do not address the underlying need. They do not help the child solve the problem or learn other strategies for next time. For many of us, that may mean a shift in how we think about and respond to behaviors. And that shift may be an ongoing learning process. One, because our child and their development is a moving target, always changing, and as soon as you hit your stride and things go well for a day, a week, or even months, challenging behaviors may happen again as they grow and change, or have a stressful experience they need help navigating. There are many different approaches for supporting children and youth, depending on the mental health disabilities and needs they have. And we know children often have more than one diagnosis impacting their functioning, whether they have depression, autism, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, etc. But most of these approaches include some variant on ensuring we provide safe, supportive relationships and environments to whatever extent we are able. Building and maintaining trusting, supportive relationships with parents and other adults, and providing them with consistency is the foundation necessary to help children who are struggling to learn to successfully co-regulate so they can build skills they need to manage their emotions and get their needs met in safe, appropriate ways, and eventually self-regulate and have positive behavior changes over time. These challenges and changes may take months or even years and may ebb and flow. The most challenging skill I've had to improve on is to learn not to react and overreact to my child's behavior, remembering instead to respond, which is difficult in the moment. And modeling those positive behaviors is pretty easy when our children are doing well. But when they become agitated and stressed, it can be more challenging to remember that we need to be their mirror, reflecting a place of calm and safety to help them get back there. It's a natural response that we may also become stressed and have more difficulty using our logical brain. When my child is shouting, I need to do more than just stay calm. I also have to respond in a genuinely calm voice with affirmative, supportive statements that validate their feelings and what they are experiencing, sometimes while reminding them of limited choices they are unamused by. Of course, children are super sensitive, so despite whatever their challenges may be, they pick up on those feelings you may be unintentionally communicating through your body language and tone of your voice. I try to channel my inner Yoda or other peaceful figures who I imagine would exude a peaceful, supportive response that my child needs in that moment. I have mastered not raising my voice most of the time, but reflecting calm in my tone is still a work in progress. And my kids are quick to call me on this, and all I can do is own it and let them know I'm trying to stay and be calm. Does anyone here have a peaceful role model, real or fictional, that you kind of channel when things get tough? If so, we'd love to hear it. You can share that in our chat box or our Q&A, sorry. And if you don't, I'd encourage you to give it some thought. It can just be kind of a humorous approach that can kind of self-support yourself. There, Mr. Rogers is a great example, and using humor. Yep. Yep. Those are great examples. And what situations do you find more challenging? And maybe what's one way that you help keep your cool? Do you have one you can think of, Karen?
Some examples that I have when my daughter was young, I know having an outing or going to shopping, for example, Target, it always ended up in a meltdown. And I realized that a trigger for her was when she wanted something and I had to say no. So what helped us is before going on the outing is making a list of things that we needed to buy, letting her hold the list and just telling her these are the only things that we're going to get today. So having that predictability piece seemed to work for her. Another piece was sometimes coming home from preschool or school and she's thirsty in the car and I don't have any water in the car. It could lead to a meltdown, and what was frustrating is I never knew what I was going to get. One time it would trigger her, one time it wouldn't trigger her. But keeping snacks and water, or just being proactive and keeping those things in the car was helpful.
Yeah, those are great examples. And someone else shared, the end of the day can be hard, right? Because everybody's tired, and regulating when we're tired is often much harder. And I think those routines that you build into the day are helpful. They don't always solve everything, but I think the more you can include those, the better. Someone else mentioned just making sure that children feel safe is helpful, and that trust, building trust, and maybe they mean trusting themselves too as well.
Sometimes remembering too that kids who struggle and they are keeping it together for the most part at school, that takes a lot of energy for them. And oftentimes will come home and just blow.
Right.
Because it's been really stressful just to keep it together at school.
Yeah, and so sometimes planning some activities, that will help them calm right when they get home, whether it's that snack right away, and then some other just kind of things to debrief from the day, or just to blow off some of that steam, can be helpful too.
But really knowing the triggers of your child is helpful. I knew with mine also, she had a really hard time switching gears. So I had to be really careful, not thinking out loud. I know my husband sometimes would say, let's go to the Children's Museum today. And she'd get all excited. And then we're on our way there. And he'd say, well, maybe we'll go to the zoo. That was just a big no-no.
Yeah.
If he was thinking out loud, maybe let's do this, she could not handle that switching gears. Again, that predictability piece. And so just knowing what are triggers for your child is helpful.
Yeah, our society has a lot of focus on independence and self-regulation. But if you think about it, children and youth really rely on that co-regulation throughout childhood and adolescence to varying degrees, right? So the kind of using that predictability, right, to help them regulate is a great strategy. We are forever trying to navigate finding that right balance for our child to provide them the right amount of support and help, and the push they need to grow in their ability to achieve the independence that will be appropriate for them. As parents, we are always trying to figure out what works and how we can do better. That might mean reflecting on our own experiences, challenging long held beliefs on how we should or should not parent. And let's face it, changing can be hard. And like our kids, we will often default to what is easy and what has worked for us before. I admit it, if a simple reminder of a consequence works to get my child to do their chores, I'm guilty of doing what's easy. But when what I'm doing isn't working and is escalating behaviors, I have to find a different solution. I have to try and solve that problem and identify what skills they need help learning. And then I have to think of ways to teach those skills, which can always sometimes be a challenge too, and it's trial and error. And part of that process might involve connecting with other parents who I know get it, connecting with our pediatrician or our therapists, mental health therapists. Sometimes it's the occupational, physical, or speech therapists, etc., depending on their challenges, to help me help my child. And then behind every challenging behavior is a lagging skill and a demand for that skill. That's one I really like to remind myself of, by Dr. Ross Green. As we try and better understand what skills our child needs to develop to solve problems and better manage behaviors, here are some questions to ask yourself as you think through the challenging behaviors you are trying to address. What common triggers and situations does my child struggle with? Is the rule or expectation developmentally appropriate for my child? Are they able to understand the expectation? Are they able to meet the expectation? Is my child able to self-regulate? Does my child have impulse control? Does my child need more support to be able to follow this rule or meet this expectation? What accommodations, support, or co-regulation can I provide that will help them be successful? And that first one, as Karen kind of shared, knowing those common triggers can be really helpful. And then when we're thinking about, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I think just remembering, and it can be a really frustrating thing, that what works for one doesn't work for the other. I know I have two daughters, really different personalities. Strategies that work for one didn't work for the other, and that can be really hard on parents, because you have one, you think you got it down, and you try it on the other and it blows. The other thing is, not all kids who have the same diagnosis will present the same way. So I know sometimes, I'll go on the internet or look at books and you find, if your kid has autism, if your kid has ADHD, do this, do this, do this. But it's not a cookie cutter solution.
Yes.
So really just knowing your child.
And knowing that it's trial and error, and that's where we have to just kind of be patient with ourselves. And then again, when you're thinking about those rules and expectations, really thinking about what their disabilities are, and making sure you have kind of the right diagnoses. If you're not making progress, you might want to follow up with the pediatricians or other therapists to make sure you've had the evaluations that really make sure that the diagnoses are correct, and that you're not missing something, because having that information can help you tailor those interventions more appropriately. And then here are some tips to help your child while they are building the skills to manage behaviors. Number one is to help ensure your child feels heard, valued, and safe. A child who is dysregulated may be frightened by their own behaviors, scary thoughts, and big feelings. And if we react rather than respond, we may increase their fear, escalating the situation. 2, create strategies for building positive connections each day. We know that just 5 minutes a day with your child can have a lasting positive impact, and the more quality time you can spend together, the better. This could be a 5-minute conversation about the highs and lows of their day, sharing or making a meal together, playing a game, taking a walk, reading with them, etc. Whatever it is your family enjoys doing together. Number 3, meet underlying needs or reasons for the misbehavior. Circle back to those 6 questions as you work to identify their triggers and try to understand the problem you are trying to help them solve. Number 4, increase intrinsic motivation and autonomy. Use positive reinforcement. Youth have their own priorities, which may or may not align with yours. Communicate with your child about what their goals are, and together come up with a plan to work on teaching them the cognitive skills they will need to achieve their goals. This could be buying their own treat at the store, or earning something else important to them, or being able to make choices between a few appropriate options. Whatever it is, really get their feedback and let them know you want to work with them to help them build skills. And if you're not sure how to build those skills, reach out to those providers or therapists that you work with. Number 5, focus on the positive attention or behavior you want to see. We can go outside when you have your shoes on. When utilizing consequences, natural and logical, make sure they are developmentally appropriate and related to behavior, events, or actions.
One thing I want to add to that, especially I think for older kids, is finding time to interact with your child outside of when they're having struggles. I know when my daughter was older, probably in her teens, I noticed that the basis of our relationship, a lot of times I was with her a lot when she was struggling, but we didn't have a lot of times outside of that time. And a therapist helped us realize that sometimes she was having behaviors in order to draw me in and be with her. So we limited the amount of time that we talked about her mental health and tried to find other enjoyable activities to do together. So that wasn't just the basis of our relationship.
That's a great point. And I think it's easy to kind of get into that pattern when you have limited time to spend together outside of work and school.
And as she got older, she was able to articulate to me, I'm really scared, Mom, because what if I don't need you anymore? And so sometimes she would continue to have behaviors, maybe not consciously, but to make sure that she needed me and that I was there for her. So making a conscious effort to be there for them in other situations, not just meltdown, here comes Mom to help.
Yeah. Number 6, allow the child an opportunity for a do-over, and when appropriate, offer to help them. Sometimes kids really benefit where they just weren't able to follow that direction and they did something they weren't supposed to, and it starts to escalate. And sometimes just offering that do-over really is a quick reset for kids, and they're happy to try again and hopefully do a better job of whatever was expected. Number 7, identify what we see. Your face is red and you were breathing fast. You seem really upset right now. Let's pick a strategy to help you feel better. And that doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can be positive, which leads to our next one of number 8. Try a time in instead of a timeout. If timeout escalates behaviors, consider trying a time in to connect and co-regulate. This can feel very counterintuitive to what many of us have learned, but it's worth giving it a try. Remember, the goal is to help your child become regulated. Sometimes it feels like we're rewarding them, and you just kind of have to try to balance that with maybe with the things you offer to do in that time in together. But sometimes reading a story or playing a quick game just helps them kind of calm down so they can get back to that regulated brain where they can then make better choices and talk through whatever the problem is with you. Number 9, praise your child's positive expected behavior and effort. Catch them doing well and ignore smaller behaviors when you can. 10, introduce your child to the school community or other activities using a student snapshot, sharing some basic information about their disability, if the staff need to know that, current interests, likes and dislikes, what they're motivated by, what they are discouraged by, their strengths and how to build on those, their challenges and positive ways to address those, your long-range school community goals, and your focus for that year. And that is one of the handouts that we'll be sending is the student snapshot, where you can find that on our PACER website. It's a simple worksheet that you print out, and I found that really useful, using that for my daughter, particularly in community activities. She's a dancer, and being able to provide that to her instructors has been really helpful so that they know how to best support her.
Someone asked how to know how to handle the physical response rather than a verbal response when you have to deny your child of something, and when they're asked to follow directions. I know sometimes with mine, when I had to, I would postpone the answer when I knew that I would have to give them a denial or say no. So for example, if I was in the car and I knew that if they were to blow up right there, it would be more dangerous for us, I would say we'll talk about it when we get home, and give the denial or say no when I got home, when I know that we're in a safer place.
Yeah, and I would say the other is to just try to, you try the redirection, right, to try to direct them to whatever the next activity is or something else positive that they do like, um, and use reminders of I always like to try to phrase these things positively. And again, that's like an ongoing practice, right, of reminding them of the expected behavior rather than telling them not to hit, right? Our hands are for gentle behaviors, or I see you're really angry. What's another way you can let me know that this doesn't work? And if they have trouble communicating, you might want to come up with some cards that they use or some alternative assistive technology devices to use to be building those communication skills so that they have another way to express that other than the physical piece. Last, we just want to touch on a couple of more formal strategies you can use at home, school, and in your community. And that's called positive behavior interventions and supports, or PBIS, and some restorative justice practices. PBIS is part of a state and national initiative, and the Minnesota Department of Education began offering schools training on PBIS in 2005. There are over 800 Minnesota schools and 25,000 nationwide that have implemented PBIS. The basic PBIS approach is to use proactive, research-based strategies to teach clearly defined behavioral expectations. Most importantly, it establishes ongoing behavior supports that can be used by school staff, parents, and community members. Research shows that when a school environment is positive and predictable, students feel safer, have better academic performance, higher test results, and make better behavior choices. Schools also show a gain in instructional time, reduction in out-of-school suspensions and discipline referrals, and show a decrease in referrals to special education. So you can ask your child's school if they are a PBIS school. Even if they are not, you can still ask them to use these strategies to support your child. You could also reach out to your district and ask them to consider becoming a PBIS school. And again, we'll send out some links on PBIS so you can learn more about that and some of the tips that you could incorporate at home. And then another strategy that has gained momentum in recent years in schools and communities are restorative practices. These practices are common around the world in communities of color and indigenous groups who believe that people are inherently good, interconnected, and relational. These practices are used to repair relationships that have been harmed. Restorative practices focus on accountability and healing, identifying who was harmed and what is needed to heal, as well as who is responsible for making that happen. This can be adapted for schools and classrooms using restorative circles or a peace path to help students learn conflict resolution with the support of adults. Utilizing the practices and principles of restorative justice adapted to schools can lead to a reduction in suspensions and improved relationships with school staff and parents, and an increase in learning and positive connection to school. Students are typically required to follow the same behavior expectations and discipline policies even when they have a disability, unless your child's 504 plan or IEP have documented modified expectations and possible consequences. So if your child needs an alternative discipline plan, be sure to discuss that with your IEP team. If it's not written in their IEP, you can expect that they'll have to follow the standard policy that everybody has to follow. If behaviors are new or increasing at school and your child receives special education, ask yourself if the current IEP continues to reflect where your student is at and is meeting their needs. If not, you may want to work with the IEP team to determine if a new functional behavior assessment is needed or a new evaluation is needed to gather current data about their needs and update that IEP to better support them. If they do not receive special education, but you think they need more support, you could request a special education evaluation. And then if your child struggles with behaviors in the community and has gotten into trouble, be sure to let the adults involved know that your child has a disability and ask if restorative practices can be used instead of more punitive measures. Some things to remember: negative attention is still attention, and if misbehavior is the only way the child knows how to get that attention, the behaviors may continue until they have the skills to seek that in a more positive way. How we respond is critical, so look for opportunities to really shift that narrative. Children want to do well and be successful. They generally already feel badly for actions that are disruptive and cause harm to others. Remember to use a calm voice and focus on the behavior, not the child, and to not take it personally, though we know this is easier said than done. Remember that knowing a rule and following it consistently are two distinct steps in the learning process. Internalizing when and why a rule must be followed may take years of applied practice. And that internalization of rules and norms happens when youth follow a rule because they believe it to be important rather than because they're worried about getting into trouble or losing some privileges. Having the ability to self-regulate and control impulses some of the time should not result in us expecting children or youth to be able to do it consistently across situations. Instead, think about why they are able to exert those skills in certain situations and how you can help them draw on those skills in more challenging situations or times of their day. Remember that the frontal cortex of the brain that helps them manage behaviors continues to grow into early adulthood. And last and most importantly, remember to give yourself and your child grace. We do have some time for questions if people have things they want to put in the Q&A box. Put that up. I know some people had asked about the slides, and those will be sent out with the links tomorrow. There'll be the links and the link for the survey. We really do appreciate if you fill that out. That really helps us, make the changes to make sure the information is useful for you. I saw somebody else had asked about more concrete information than what's in the slides. I could include maybe the tips would be easy to include. I don't know that you'd want all of the information. That might be overwhelming, but I can add those tips and those questions to ask if that would be helpful as well. Let's see.
Oh, there was something up there about 22-year-old. Oh, I think she was just making a comment.
Do you have any resources that are specific to adolescents? One of the handouts that we're going to send out is actually tips for talking with teens that was written by our youth advisory board, youth board members that help with some of those pieces. So we'll send that out. That's pretty helpful. And it can be helpful to even share that with your adolescent and ask, are there other things that they can think of that would be helpful when you're working with them?
Laura,
Yes.
the reminder email that people got 5 minutes before, no, I'm sorry, 1 hour, I think, before the start,
Yes.
has all the links. It has a
Oh, it
link to
does.
the
Okay, so
slide
you should
deck
have that. Okay,
and a
great.
link to all the resources that you gave me. And the follow-up email that they'll receive tomorrow will have those links too.
Okay, great. And I can add maybe just those the tips as well, if that would be helpful for people to that email and those questions to be thinking about. Okay, and then before we go, we just want to share with you that we have our upcoming parent leadership training in February for anyone who's interested in learning more about systems change and advocacy to help all children in the state have better access to the mental health care and resources they need to be well and thrive. Our applications, you can follow the QR code, scan the QR code, and the applications are open till January 26th, and that happens on 2 Friday mornings over Zoom. It's a lot of fun if you haven't done it before and you're interested in learning more about that. And then it also kind of leads into our Day at the Capitol, which is March 7th this year. And Pacers Day at the Capitol happens to also be Mental Health Day at the Capitol. So I think it'll be a really great year to be there advocating for mental health. So if you're interested in joining us for that, there's that followed up in a couple weeks after the February training. And then we also have some upcoming workshops that will kind of build on some of the things we talked about today. The next one in February on Valentine's Day is planning an IEP team meeting when your child has mental health challenges. And then the next one is in April, and that is getting help for children and youth with mental health needs. And we'll be talking about kind of the different systems of care and how to navigate some of those to get them the support they need. And then creating a crisis plan for youth with mental health needs is in May, and that helps both with that crisis planning for home and school, kind of thinking through what steps need to be put in place for families who haven't had to do that yet, but need some support. And if there are any other questions, we do have time if anybody had any questions they wanted to discuss. We're happy to hang around for a little bit and chat. Otherwise, if people want to get going, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And we really ask that you consider taking a few minutes tomorrow when you get that survey to give us your feedback.
Laura, I also put that survey link right in the chat. So if people want to
Oh,
get
thank you.
head start on that, they
Yeah,
look
that's
in the
great.
chat
Yeah.
for that
It's
link.
very cool. The iron's hot. And someone asked if this is available in Spanish. We don't have a way to make this available, do we?
I think they're referring to the link they sent PHP to C216.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the links.
So
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we do have some of those in Spanish. I don't know if all of them are translated, but I can look and include the ones that we have for sure in tomorrow's follow-up. Make myself a note. I don't forget.
there's somebody looking for the restorative resource you shared along with PBIS. Can you please share the restorative resource you shared along with PBIS?
Yeah, I don't know if that was in what you shared today, but there is a link that I can include that's for the Minnesota Department of Education, and they have a page on it that we will send out. Yep. And the PBIS, the link that's a page on our website that will also go out.
The recording, is there any chance that this recording would be available so I could share it with a parent that really needs to hear it? She doesn't read very well. If somebody wants a recording, if you email webinars, here I'll type an answer right in, webinars@pacer.org. Oops. We can send you a link to the recording. Definitely. Oh, there is a question at the very end now, so I'll let you go tackle that.
Okay. What suggestions do you have for strategies to address poor academic performance that is hindered by class avoidance, hiding behaviors? We've had 2 different schools unable to effectively address this issue. So typically we would start with, is the assessment or evaluation that the school has completed accurate and current, because you want to make sure you've got the current data on maybe what those triggers are for some of that behavior, right? So doing that FBA, that functional behavior assessment, to really sort of understand what's behind some of those behaviors. If they're hiding in school, are they hiding at certain times of the day to avoid certain classes? Where do they go? Making sure that their accommodations provide the appropriate supports so they have safe places they can take breaks, and maybe adults they're connecting with on some of those things that are hard. If they don't have a check-in or check-out at school, sometimes that's helpful to build that relationship, that trusting relationship with staff at school, to really help them have somebody to talk to about those things. So if they anticipate something's going to be hard, they've already talked about it. Maybe they've chosen a strategy that they've been working on with the student, to be able to use that strategy if things get hard. They can go to the resource room for support. That can be a good tool. The other one outside of school I would encourage you to think about is, do they need other therapies? Are there other things that are interfering with their ability to attend class? And it really depends on the disabilities that are driving that. If it's anxiety, which is one we see a lot with school and class avoidance, it's that combination of, are they getting the mental health support they need? Maybe they need more than just that check-in with the social worker in the morning. So you could ask if they have CTSS, Children's Therapeutic Supports and Services, where therapists come into the school and they could be meeting with the student to be addressing some of those behaviors, really making sure that the IEP has identified the skills that they need to build right around that advocacy. And if there's academic skills, maybe math is really hard and they're behind, right? Maybe they need, as a related service, even if they didn't previously have math, maybe they need help with that particular subject, so that they can be applying some of those strategies to cope while they're getting that help on that subject.
Sometimes too, finding out, like Laura's saying, what is the trigger, what's causing the avoidance. Sometimes in addition to academic issues, there may be social emotional things going on. Sometimes kids are getting bullying. They're being bullied and they're trying to avoid certain kids. Um, Sometimes going into or out of lunch and recess can be really overwhelming for kids, and they tend to avoid before or after those times too.
Do you see that in the box, Jamie, about sending to webinars at pacer.org?
That is the correct address, webinars@pacer.org. Just maybe double check your, I think even if, yeah, but that is the correct email address. I got a couple of them, or somebody from earlier already emailed it. So yes, it's definitely
Okay, it's definitely working.
webinars. I'm just double checking. Yeah, it's webinars@pacer.org. So just double check the typing. It should be there. I just got another one from somebody looking for a copy of the recording. So
Best advice for not feeling so overwhelmed with the information and learning everything and trying to understand when you are your child's only support and the diagnosis is very recent and he's 15. That is a tough one. One would be, if you haven't called Pacer Center, you could give Pacer Center a call and get connected with an advocate, who could kind of talk through some of the different options. It depends on, I don't know if they have a IEP or a 504, or if that's something they need. If you're thinking they need more support at school, or you're trying to navigate how to get those supports in the community, you can certainly give us a call, and we're happy to kind of talk through, the ways to do that and who to reach out to in the community, depending on what the needs are. It's tough if it's when you're a single parent. I think it's really hard. I would recommend you try to find out as much information and get connected. If you need support through your county, the county can likely offer some support. Just like I said, we kind of need to know what the disabilities are that we're talking about. Depending on the level of disability too, you can also go through the state, to seek that disability designation recognition under the state, and that can open the doors to some more resources as well. There's respite care through counties usually. That can be difficult too, but connecting maybe with family or friends who can be a support, or getting connected with other parents who are in the same situation, to build kind of a network with them. social media is a great place to find local groups for people that are dealing with similar disabilities or other challenges like that. But I would say give us a call. We're happy to kind of talk through your particular situation and see what support we can offer.
Yeah, I think for me then, and for a lot of parents, the number one way to not feel so overwhelmed is to build a team and to connect with other parents who are going through similar things. It can be really isolating. So finding your people is helpful. Um, Depending on the diagnosis, sometimes there's diagnosis specific organizations that have resources as far as support groups. NAMI is also a good place too to find support groups, but connecting with other parents who are going through it is really helpful.
Uh, well, if that, I don't know, how do you feel? I was going to say,
We can wrap it up if we don't have any other questions. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Thanks so much.
I
Um,
will, I'm sorry, Laura. I will,
okay,
we're getting several people who, are looking for a copy of the recording. So hopefully that I'll try to get it in that follow-up email for sure.
okay,
And that follow-up email again it comes to you, one day after the close of the webinar. So look for it at 1 p.m., around 1 p.m. tomorrow.
great. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you again all for joining us. Please do fill out the survey. And if you do have questions or concerns, call Pacer Center, get connected with an advocate. We're happy to help you try to navigate the situations as best as we can. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.